Hi, my name is Mara G. Haseltine, and I'm an artist and explorer, and we're here at the Explorers Club.
Hey, I'm Richard Garriott. I'm president of the Explorers Club, and welcome to our headquarters.
Yes, and I'm thrilled to be here. I am a member of the Explorers Club since 2008, whose mission is to explore land, sea, and outer space. And I'm debuting a prototype project, which is an ongoing project called the Rococo Cocco Reef, which is based on a unicellular phytoplankton called the coccolithophore. Coccolithophores are incredibly important in balancing our Earth's atmosphere. They sequester vast amounts of carbon dioxide in their skeletons, which this is a rendition of a skeleton without the flesh, and when they sink to the bottom, and also they create vast amounts of oxygen. So I want to make this sculpture ultimately into an ecotourist dive site that's also a site for science and citizen science and an attraction. But the idea is to make it function like the coccolithophore itself. So it would be made of calcium carbonate, which is the same substance actually that coral skeletons and shells are made out of. So my idea is to go to where there's lots of bleached coral, which unfortunately is all over the world, and grind that up and machine it, much the same way that we machined these discs, which are now covered in the diamond form of calcium carbonate, which is marble. It's just compressed calcium carbonate. Calcium carbonate is actually chalk also. The White Cliffs of Dover are composed of coccolithophore skeletons. So the title for the Rococo Cocco Reef comes from sort of a merging between art and nature. And so a lot of people call this biomimicry now. And that's a lot about what this is mimicking nature, but also enhancing it. So in the French Rococo style, it's very ornate and very light. And it's often the original pieces were actual shells that were encrusted and made into these sort of plaster ornamental things. So that is kind of what I was going for with the Rococo Cocco Reef. Also, I work with a group called Tara Expeditions, and I was an explorer on their ship and artist in residence. And they taught me so much about plankton, and they're French, and so I've been very inspired by them and their group. So I've been making plankton that I started capturing all around the world, but with Tara Ocean Foundation on their ship. It's called Tara, which is actually the name of my closest friend, so that's incredible. So the thing that's so amazing about copying nature and also trying to do things that are functional is that it's so functional. Like, it was so easy for me to slip these discs into each other and create this orb. It almost happened too fast. The first one was too large because I barely needed to use any glue at all. It just stuck together because that's how it is in nature. And so this idea of creating something that's based on an actual natural form is something that really, really inspired me. I also want to make things functional, and actually a sphere in the microscopic realm is the most efficient way to use space, and a dome or a sphere is very, very sturdy. And that would, I think, be a great shape for underwater. I think also what I've noticed in underwater reefs, or even just, things that are functional and not meant to be art or ecotourism, is that if you see repeated shapes over and over again, like domes and domes, that's what looks good. Like the clean shapes, not the ornate stuff like coral, which grows on it almost like it's going to be like a living Rococo sculpture, which grows with nature. So, I mean, it's not artificial. It's not an artificial reef. It's actually going to be made of calcium carbonate and all natural ingredients. So it's sort of like, I think this like kind of way that we need to merge right now with Mother Nature, because Coral reefs are really the canary in the coal mine for the planet. I mean, reefs that were around when I was a teenager just simply don't exist anymore. And also, there's vast dead zones where there's no coccolithophores or no plankton creating oxygen and sequestering carbon dioxide. I mean, Tara Ocean's sailors are telling me they're sailing through almost like continents of dead zones right now. So this piece, in its lightness, and I put some crushed abalone to sort of give it a shimmer, is really about optimism. It's really about a solution, and that we can do it. This is a prototype for something that we can do. We can do it. So they say that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I actually make things that I find beautiful. So that's just from my perspective, but they're based on nature, and I often like almost enhance the curves and stuff just a little bit, the way a Rococo Cocco artist would do it. And to me, the most beautiful thing in the planet is nature and the natural form. I would consider myself a figurative artist, only the figures that I'm making are invisible to the human eye. But if you look at my website and you see I'm traditional sculpting background. So when I make something, I try to enhance the nature and make it seductive to the human so that the human wants to know more about it. They're attracted to it. So I try and make my work beautiful. So the Rococo Cocco project is an ongoing project. It's not finished. This is the most recent prototype, basically, and I'm proving that we can build it. And my goal is to actually build one underwater, but this is basically proof of concept. And I've been working on it now about 4 years. So there's videos, it's been featured at the United Nations in different forms, but this is the unveiling of the most recent rendition. And this sculpture in particular, I've been working on for about 2 years, but the whole project longer than that. And I may be working on it the rest of my life, actually.
Do you want to say anything about what Ocean Week here at the club means?
Yeah, so we're here not only at the club headquarters, but also on day one of Oceans Week. And for the club, we have a number of big events throughout the year, but Oceans Week is one of the biggest, and I would argue also one of the most important. We do it in concert with the United Nations. We're actually the second or third oldest non-governmental organization that's part of the UN, and so we bring global leaders here this week to see about and discuss the state of the art for scientific exploration of in particular the oceans, but inherently that also means the planet, and also discuss solutions. And so that whether that's things that nation states can do or things we can do as individuals or as explorers or within our schools, those are all things that we discussed this week here at the Explorers Club.
Yes. It's like all of Atlantis comes to the Explorers Club this week, which is the solstice, just to be a fruitcake about it. It's amazing. It's my favorite. This is my winter solstice. This is my favorite time all year round. This basically is my Christmas.
The club is actually normally open to the public year round. And we do public lectures every week here at the club and have a number of other bigger events that are open to the public. This is technically open to the public, but also because of limited space, people had to sign up. Mm-hmm. And so by the time people are hearing this, for this year, it will be full. But we do this every year at about the same point in time. And so if anybody's interested in joining us, we have a lot of the events throughout this week that are open to the public, and I encourage you to come here, even not during Oceans Week. You'll see a lot of these inspirational things still around. But and you're always welcome to come here as an explorer and explore our halls. But to participate in a lot of the functions that we do, you do need to go on our calendar at explorers.org and sign up.
Could you just tell them that was Indiana Jones' original?
Oh yeah,
that story, because I think that.
Yeah. So we have.
And this is Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah. So any explorer of the last 120 years that's worth their salt has been, or still is, a member of the Explorers Club. And that includes, famous people like Theodore Roosevelt, i.e. the President of the United States, who on his application, which is behind there, it describes, what makes you qualified to be an explorer? And he goes like, well, I did chart most of the western United States, and I did start the national park system, and oh, by the way, I'm President of the United States, so we let him in. But this is another one of our favorites right here. People may not know the name of Roy Chapman Andrews. He was the first person to discover dinosaur eggs, and therefore prove that dinosaurs were likely reptilian in their history. But he actually was the inspiration for the character that became Indiana Jones. In fact, the movie makers studied his archives that are here at the Explorers Club before they made the first Indiana Jones movie. And it turns out he actually did use a whip. And legend says that it's because when he was in Muslim countries or places that he wasn't allowed to take a gun, he would use his whip. And he was apparently quite good with the whip. And so this, in a sense, is the real original whip from the person who was the real inspiration for Indiana Jones. So this is the real Indiana Jones whip.
I was actually going to ask you, who's the most famous visitor that's ever been?
Most famous visitor? Well, that's so hard to say because so many of the greatest explorers have been and or still are members. Sir Edmund Hillary, who summited Everest, was a member. Don Walsh still is an active member, the first guy to go down to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. All the Apollo astronauts. Buzz Aldrin is still our honorary president, and Neil Armstrong was our honorary president some years in the past. So Dr. Sylvia Earle, for example, will be here tonight, as a matter of fact. She'll be here all week. So she's probably one of our most...
deepness.
She's probably one of our most famous current members as well. But really, any explorer worth their salt, as I've mentioned, is likely a member of the Explorers Club.
And the Explorers Club once hosted Amelia Earhart?
Yeah, that's correct. So, as a lot of old private clubs were 100 years ago, originally the Explorers Club didn't officially allow women as, quote, members, but they did celebrate women explorers. So Amelia Earhart was one of our most famed and celebrated explorers. And then finally, the men of this club woke up and changed the rules back in the 1980s. And so now we have a very, very
And Sylvia was the first female member. Her deepness, Dr. Sylvia Earle, who has created hope spots all over the world, was the first female member in 1985. I don't know if you want to include that.
That's cool.
Yeah. Sponsored by Carl Sagan.
Yeah, who was a member, of course, too.
Yeah.
That's
Sorry,
great.
Yeah, Neil deGrasse Tyson, for example, across at the Museum of Natural History. In fact, it's interesting, the Museum of Natural History, which is just across Central Park from where we are here on East 70th Street, they not only share a lot of common goals and purpose and membership, but even presidents. So about 30% of the presidents of the Explorers Club have also been presidents of the Museum of Natural History. And a lot of their famed leaders over there are also leaders here. For example, Neil deGrasse Tyson is a member of the club as well, who's obviously the great cosmologist over there. Here at the club, here at our headquarters here in New York, we have another one of your amazing pieces hanging up in our gallery. That is a oversized, 40,000 times, I believe I read on it, 40,000 times enhanced skeleton of a Radiolarian. And it's up in our gallery. It's one of our most cherished pieces. People talk about it all the time. Similar to these cocophores, they again are at the bottom of the food chain, something we all need to know about, something we all need to protect. And so having art installations like you have been providing here for us let people both see and appreciate the microscopic world that is really at the foundation of the potential crises that we're now going to have due to global warming and all the other side effects of the changes that we are making here now on our planet.
So this piece has been actually at the Explorers Club since Ocean Week 2016, I believe, and it's remained, and it's part of the permanent collection. I think it's the only really modern piece of art that is part of the permanent collection here at the Explorers Club, and it's also of a single-celled plankton skeleton, like the Coccolithophore downstairs. The big difference between a Radiolarian, which is also photosynthesizes like Coccolithophores, is their skeletons are made of silica, which is basically glass, not calcium carbonate. So you can see from looking at it that
and the Coccolithophore too, that the way that the skeleton grows, it's like an interior skeleton and then it grows outwards. So I think the double layer is something that makes it really special. I love the way that it unifies the room, and you know, one of my huge inspirations, I mean, he's very, very famous, is Ernst Haeckel, who is a German anatomist who studied and drew plankton. And so there's something I think that's very kind of 19th century and modern about this at the same time, and it's exciting to have it here at the club. I'm actually going to reveal some prototypes tonight that have never been revealed, for a project I'm working on in Cuba, and I'm really excited about that. And there was this like element of secrecy to the club when I first joined it, and it was, you know, I mean, it's where people have planned expeditions all over the world into outer space. In fact, Richard, I believe, has been to outer space many times. And so it's really like a nexus for these people who have this extreme trait of curiosity, which I think is actually the most beautiful trait, besides compassion and love, of course, that the human can, you know, exhibit.
And if I can actually throw a bit too, just one of my great appreciations here for your Rococo Cocco Reef is that not only is this a living example of how literally not only we produce great art, but art that is inspirational scientifically, art that actually has an impact scientifically in the sense of it will literally become, if you plant these in the water, they will become an artificial reef, which will not only draw corals and fish, but all the divers that come down there to appreciate the coral and fish will also be inspired by the artificial reef that you're creating. And restoring reefs is something that we are going to have to do as humanity to survive all the impacts we're currently creating with climate change. And so while some people are doing simple artificial reefs like you know, a geodesic structure just to provide you know, something to anchor on for the coral, or some people are sinking cars or ships, isn't it nice to consider putting something that is both aesthetically beautiful and inspirational and informative about the reality of life within our food chain and within the reefs themselves. So I think this is really right at that sweet spot of art and inspiration.
So tonight is actually a really big moment because though the Rococo Cocco Reef, this is the newest rendition of the prototype, it's actually, you know, been seen by the general public before, but I'm about to reveal some things tonight after the choral lecture for a project I'm doing with the Ocean Foundation in Cuba. And these have never been seen prototypes, and it's really special to me to reveal these prototypes for the first time to this audience, which is so ocean-minded, at the Explorers Club, because my mission as an artist is to infuse art and poetry into the field sciences. So the Ocean Foundation is working with a company called Seacore, and what they're doing is they're capturing all of the the coral larvae at night under the full moon when it spawns. So and then they're fertilizing it, and then they place it on these tiles. So in this case are some of the original prototypes, which are art but also highly functional, and I'll describe how they're functional. So I'm going to actually this is the case that's actually probably going to go with me to Cuba quite soon. So this is the original designed by Seacore. And It's made out of cement. It's very simple. So the coral polyp lands on this, and it grows a little bit, and then divers place these on the reef. And so we focus on using corals that are considered hard coral and therefore structural because they're branching, like staghorn and elkhorn coral are the primary corals in the Caribbean that do this. So I just wanted to show you guys my version, the original version, which we are going to make a two-part mold. Would be really almost impossible to make in a two-part mold, but this is just to show my artistic process. So this is the original version, and then these are the versions that I made. They have holes in the middle, and they're easy to grasp, and they also have lots of nooks and crannies. And then I'm going to lift this up to show you a larger version because I think it'll be easier to see this. We also did some biomimicry on this. So this pattern is the same kind of pattern that is actually in coral skeletons. And we thought that the coral babies would like to attach to that. There's lots of bumps. It's easy to hold. The hole makes it so that you can string it, and we can create a nursery. When I was last in Cuba, they had all of them on a nursery because a big hurricane had just happened, and they were going to put them back on the reef. So these are kind of like, these stars, think of them as kind of like egg pods in a way. So it's this way that I'm really interested in as an artist, that humans are interacting with nature in a way that helps it. So I practice a concept called geotherapy, which is about kind of us becoming doctors for the planet in natural kind of homeopathic ways, of course. So on the back is a design, and it may be really hard to see it, but I'll describe it a little bit. So this, I'm working with a local shaman named Israelito Manatazes in Cuba, and he gave me a mask of his, and this is the Loki, who is son of Yemanja, who's the owner of the ocean. And this is a full moon, and Yemanja's hands, and she's often looks like she has sparkles, and she walks on water, and she's all of water though. So she's, you know, what we're made out of is water, and so she's the goddess of the oceans and all the rivers. And so she's often depicted with almost, it looks like little sparkles, but they look so much like the coral spawning that I put those here. And then on this side is a microscope, and then here is the hard corals. So, and then it says HO on Cuba, because our goal is to work with local artists there and create lots of them in Cuba. And we want to make Cuba really well known for this sustainable reef restoration. I mean, it is the ideal spot in the Caribbean to do this kind of thing, because Cuba, obviously, for reasons that we all know about, does not have a lot of building. It doesn't, so a lot of the reefs, they undergo damages from general climate change, like water temperature and increased acidification, but it doesn't have vast amounts of runoff from like agricultural industry and things which kill many corals. So there's about 400 reefs in Cuba, and probably only two really healthy ones. One is our site, Guanasinibes, which is the westernmost peninsula, and one is called Gardens of the Queen, which was Castro's fishing ground. So another nice thing is there's tons of fish in Cuba. It hasn't been fished out. You can see fish there that are nowhere else in the Caribbean because large groupers and things, because it's been fished out. So this is Ted. I've known Ted, I don't know how long at this point, but a while, and he runs Ocean Week, and it's always so exciting to be here during Ocean Week, and the way that he just has this really lighthearted attitude about the whole thing, but it's really great.
Well, thank you so much. I would say back to Mara that your inspirational work has come into the club numerous times. You're really and still up on the top floor there. It's become a part of every single time you give a tour of the club. And this year you've got a sensational exhibition downstairs. So I've loved seeing it already, and I've already seen crowds and crowds around it. So thank you.
Right, and can you describe what session is just breaking out right now and why that's important?
Yeah, we just did a blue economy session. We talked a little bit about what the definition of blue economy and how does that play out for different groups. And then we had Schmidt Marine Technology Partners brought in 4 examples of world-class tech. There's just incredible, different kinds of, there's a micro robot, you had sensors, eDNA sampling, and the actual people who are devising these instruments and running these companies were here and participated in it. So it was an incredible glimpse into the way that ocean tech is transforming the oceans today.
The Rococo Cocco Reef is a multi-dimensional living artwork and eco-tourist site. This sculptural installation depicts on a grand scale coccolithophore skeletons after they have begun to disassemble on the ocean's floor. Coccolithophores are tiny unicellular plankton, which photosynthesize to create oxygen on the ocean's surface. In addition, they create an albedo effect, cooling the Earth's atmosphere and sequestering carbon dioxide when they sink through the water column. The Rococo Cocco Reef is a perfect marriage between design and function. Composed of calcium carbonate, which is the same thing coral skeletons are made of. So not only will the Rococo Cocco Reef depict a carbon sink, it will also function as a carbon sink.